we always believe the United States, when a fever spreads through the world, the United States will get it last. And that, look, but for 80,000 votes in 3 states, the Americans might have been smug and said, well, yes, we were exposed to the virus, but we didn't get it. So there may be something educational. But this is not just an American problem. I mean, the quality of democracy in India, the quality of democracy in South Africa, the quality of democracy in the Philippines, all worse than 10 years ago. And a country like Turkey, which was 10 years ago a real democracy, certainly 20 years ago was a real democracy, is today an outright dictatorship. And so this is something we need to understand. This is going around. The semi-developed world is more exposed than the developed world. Within the developed world, and I think maybe many of us carry in mind the old history of the 1930s, where the English-speaking countries were the most immune to the anti-democratic disease then, that actually England, and I say England, not Britain, because Scotland is better, England and the United States are among the most exposed this time around.
Right. And so who do you think is the leader to bring back this notion of democratic norms or kind of restore the standing of democracy in the world? Who takes the lead on that?
The search for leaders is the problem. Because what we're defending, the reason that this is such a struggle is on the one side, you see charismatic leaders who say, I alone can fix it. On the other side, you see people say we need to defend institutions, we need to defend meetings. And one of the questions I get asked a lot by younger people is, what can I do? And my answer is always, join something. Join something that has meetings. Don't join a cause or a campaign, but a regular, develop the habits of democracy. And where it's boring, that's where it's important. At neighborhood advisory councils that oversee, zoning and alcohol licensing, PTAs, anything that involves regular working with people of somewhat different views, because that's what's lost. I mean, I think one of the reasons that social media is so important to this, there's a lot of ways in which the impact of social media is exaggerated. But here's one way in which it's really important. What social media promises, and sometimes even delivers, is a completely personalized experience. You will see the photographs only from the people you like, jokes only that you think are funny, political comments only that are agreeable to you. If you see anything you don't like, you can instantly eliminate it. And you can live in a world made up of that's designed, or seemingly so, just for you. Actual politics could not be more different. You have to work with people who are very different from you, whether you like it or not. You have to find ways to achieve common purposes. And so politics feels old-fashioned. I mean, you see a lot of sort of glitzy consultants will say, well, politics is so 19th century, we have to find ways of bringing it into the 21st century. What they mean is we have to find ways of making it more personalized. But the fact that other people are different from you is something that is not going to change. And if you're going to be an active participant instead of a passive consumer, you have to work with people who are different from you. And that's why when you say the invoking leadership, the moment you say, I'm going to, it's obviously it's a powerful human hunger. I mean, we want leaders. The human desire, think how powerful the human appetite for messiahs must be if you can believe something as facially ridiculous as that Bernie Sanders could be the messiah. But people believed in him, and for no reason. He's just a cantankerous, unpleasant, unfunny Larry David cousin. As was often said, that the person who should have been most grateful that Ted Cruz was elected to the U.S. Senate was Bernie Sanders, because before Ted Cruz got there, Bernie Sanders was the most disliked member of the U.S. Senate, and after he was only the second most disliked member of the U.S. Senate. But people want this, and what they don't understand is the answer is you. I'm sorry, this has turned into a long speech.
No, that's okay.
Let me say one more thing about this. One of the great truly charismatic figures in American history, and he was on the left, was a man named Eugene Victor Debs, founder. He was a union leader, became a candidate for president on the Socialist Party ticket. And he was a legendary orator and a man of tremendous courage and personal presence, a truly charismatic figure. And followers in the socialist world looked to him, and he would tell them, I would not lead you to the promised land if I could, because if I could lead you in, someone else could lead you out. And his message was, you have to do it yourself.
Yeah, that's interesting to think about. I feel like in some ways my generation and college students today, they're in some sense more individualized, and that they have more freedom and access to more information, and they can be who they want to be in so many ways. But there is this like sense that you really need someone else to tell you it's okay, or to put the rules in place for
Right.
you.
Well, when you talk about access to information, it's true. Information has never been more potentially abundant than now. But the flip side of that access is it has never been more up to you whether you use the access or not, because it is also possible today to be ignorant on a spectacular scale. And it's possible to be relatively ignorant just by saying, I'm not going to use this access. I'm going to use my time and these powerful social media for other things. Or I'm going to disconnect from politics and apply my curiosity to something that is completely apolitical, something completely individualistic. And that all of those things become possible. And when that happens, you make it possible for politics to become a hobby. And as politics becomes a hobby, it's taken up by hobbyists. And hobbyists are not like everybody else.
So what do you make of some of the civic renewal efforts that we've seen? There's certainly been increased efforts to increase voter registration and get people more involved in local politics.
I think super exciting, super important. And the more local, the better. And watch cable news if you want to, be on Twitter if you want to, but don't let it consume so much time. And don't be so consumed with the national question that you disconnect from your local political situation. Our parents and grandparents were more likely to serve on a jury than we are. Living in the District of Columbia, where there are only about 550,000 people, and you end up serving on juries a lot. And that experience is really instructive. That was the place where your grandparents learned how to participate in a democracy, even more than at the voting booth. Having a potentially very important decision about another human being in the hands of 6 or 12 people, and with chosen almost completely at random, very different experiences, and having to work something out. And those experiences, if you haven't had enough of them, I encourage you to seek out more. And if you're tempted to shirk jury duty, and it's so inconvenient, I understand that. I've certainly done my part of trying to shirk it. But once you're stuck and you have to do it, at the end of it, you say, that was one of the most valuable things I ever did.
Is there a time in American history when you think that we had kind of peak democracy, so to speak?
I don't think we should ever look back. When we can learn, I'm a historian by academic training, and I'm interested in it. We should always learn from the past. But Bertolt Brecht, the German poet, said, we must always prefer the bad new days to the good old days. This is our time, and there are things to learn from the American past, but the American past, like all past, also had deep flaws. I think the thing that should keep us in mind is not a backward glance over the shoulder for anything other than information, but we should also say, count ourselves blessed that we live at a time when our actions can make a difference for our country, and to step up to that responsibility. And that includes learning to be a responsible user of the social media that are implicated in our problem. It also means learning to be a better neighbor. So much. One of the ways to predict who voted for Donald Trump was social isolation. If you had lots of friends, if you had a stable family, you were much less likely to be a Trump voter than if you were more alone. And so bear that in mind, because other people's lonesomeness impinges on you. I have a friend who went door knocking in pro-Trump areas in Nevada in 2016. He's a very successful person from the Bay Area in the tech industry. I mean, part of the America that has done well. And what he was struck by was, as he was knocking on doors, as everybody in that area was home. They had nowhere to go. And the men were home too. They had nowhere to go. And they had nothing to do. They were home watching television. And he thought in the area he knew, if you stopped at people's doors at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, not even the pet would be out with the dog walker, and no one would be home because they were enmeshed in a complex world. And so one of the questions we're all left with is, we live in a society in which a lot of people are being left behind by technological change, and someone has to reach back and grasp them and pull them along.